Present.
So I guess I'll just call the roll of those present. Michelle Boudreau,
Here.
Bill Bontempi.
Here.
Okay, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Aaron, would you mind leading us?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Feel this, I think you have to say that I was taping for,
Oh, that's right.
taxes.
Anyone else taping?
We're ready.
Okay,
Yeah, no.
all right. Thank you. Okay, so first order of business is organizational discussion. I don't know if this, well, actually, originally I thought we would elect a chair of the subcommittee, but the votes got taken off of this, so I don't know if you want to try to do a chair at another time or just proceed as a subcommittee.
Yeah, I don't think it really matters.
Okay.
Not much need for direction. Go ahead, and then I'll.
So then the next thing would be to get into the eval.
Okay. So we have, when we've done this in years past, we have each school committee member submit their own evaluation. Has that already happened?
No.
Okay, so is that one of the things that we're gonna discuss tonight? Okay, all right, good, perfect. So, yeah, so let's discuss the evaluation.
Okay.
John, you wanna take the lead?
Sure. So you've got an electronic version of this, but I also brought documents here. So the first thing I do with all of the people I evaluate, basically principals and directors, is ask them to do a theory of action, and then we revisit it through the process. And so I did the same thing with myself. And so in here you can see my original theory of action, which focused on my general assumptions: people are to be valued and developed, and the overall needs of the learning community are of paramount importance. And the experience of COVID has left us in a worse position than before, and I need to earn trust by demonstrating social respect, personal regard, competence, and integrity, and evidence-based practices are undervalued in education. And then so my assumptions were that achievement testing has not returned to pre-COVID levels. Your entry plan needs to maximize the opportunities for personal connections with students and staff, and systems should be designed to bring out the best in every educator and student, and the community's best thoughts about the priorities for improvement have been identified and documented in the strategic plan. And so my action strategies were to faithfully implement the strategic plan as a good faith commitment to demonstrating respect for the people and their ideas, and that the instructional components of the strategic plan should be prioritized to address academic and social emotional needs. And the overall goal is to embed evidence-based practices in the generative social field. So then I reflected upon that again in February, and you can see I made some changes. Those are all highlighted in gray. So first is, happy to report that achievement results have returned to pre-COVID levels at the high school. In fact, they're above pre-COVID levels. But we still have that issue in 3 to 8, so that was a change. And then probably more substantive changes that I'm beginning to feel that although the strategic plan was developed in a way that engaged many stakeholders, I'm not certain there was shared commitment to making the comprehensive changes described in the plan. Some folks who are now involved with doing some of the things in the plan, I think, may have felt like that was work that was going to be done by others. And some folks who have budgetary authority for supporting parts of the strategic plan have expressed some wavering on their commitment to fund what was in the strategic plan. So now I'm wondering to what extent the strategic plan really represented a high level of commitment from everybody. And then, so I've also made some adjustments to my action strategies. One is that I'm still committed to the strategic plan, but I no longer feel that, like, if I get the strategic plan across the finish line, everyone's going to feel like their wishes were honored. In fact, some people might feel like their wishes in some ways were not honored. And then next, I have really sort of focused on implementing MTSS because that provides a framework for addressing the academic and behavioral components of the strategic plan. And really saying it should be prioritized because it kind of is a way of grouping and subsuming some of the other objectives. And so it makes it a little bit easier for folks to sort of get their mind around. So I guess I'll just pause there and see if there are any reactions to my theory of action or changes in my theory of action.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the strategic plan. So so you have sort of a unique perspective in that you've come into a school district which had just adopted a strategic plan, and it was basically laid at your feet to say, here it is. As you've worked through many of the initiatives, I wonder if you can be a little bit more, give us a little bit more specific sort of indications, like for instance, the financial piece of it. Like, where are we running into? Are we running into problems with like finance committee and saying, no, we're not gonna do that? Is that what you're referring to?
That's what I'm referring to.
Okay, so we're basically, so even though the school district did in good faith strategic plan, which is exactly what was requested of us, we now have the town of Wilbraham. Are you getting the same pushback from Hamden?
I'm not
Okay.
on finance, nope.
Right. So, so we made a good faith effort to do that strategic plan, and now we're getting pushback from the finance committee. That's unfortunate. I guess the bigger question is that when we get that pushback, is to then bring it back to the stakeholders. And I think we're talking about the investment that we were making in vocational education. And I would take it back to the stakeholders. We still have a list of all of those people who were part of the strategic plan. And I think this is something that we need to take a step further with the communities for them to understand that, this wasn't like a small minority of people. I mean, this was it's a pretty broad coalition. I'm gonna say 3/4 of the people there had expressed some or a lot of interest in vocational training and vocational opportunities for students. And I think back to our round table where Jake and Angela were there, and they were asking questions which I think were good questions, but probably not the right questions. And that is, how many kids are denied vocational educational opportunities? I think the real question to ask is, how many kids are interested but do not pursue it, or how many that do pursue it end up not being able to actually enroll? Because the first question wasn't answered, it wasn't even asked, and I think that's a bigger question, because I think if you have a kid who is, let's say, interested in doing auto mechanics, right? Well, they're not going to get that here. They're not going to get that at LPVEC, so they have to go to Pathfinder. So they know that if they want to do this, they're going to have to take their school experience and spend a good chunk of it at another school. And I think there's a lot of kids out there that are like, yeah, no, that's not worth it for me to do that. So I'd really be interested to know what percentage of kids out there, have an interest in vocational, have a true interest in it. Like, take all programmatic availability out of the equation and just find out what percentage of our kids are interested in the trades. And then I would start from there, and work up. And that's, some of that is the work of the school committee, some of that's the work of the superintendent, and some of that is the work of those who worked on the strategic plan. And I'm sure that I know that the people that I worked with closely with the strategic plan, I know they'd be willing to come back out if they needed to and put their foot forward again. And I think it's important, but that's unfortunate. And it's, I guess I can see from your perspective where it's disappointing. Like when you come to a strategic plan and you think, this is great, this is what the community wants, and then you find out that, well, everybody but the finance committee. And that's, I don't think that's fair to you, and I certainly don't think it's fair to the students in this district.
And I would say also internally, just looking within the organization, one of the things that I had mentioned is that, my slight criticism, which is maybe a little bit more striking out of the plan, was how comprehensive it was, that it might be a recipe for burnout. I do hear that a little bit from within the organization, all the things we're trying to change at once, being a really a fast pace to try to keep up. So that is.
We had 100
action steps.
100 action steps, and you got, you have a 5-year implementation period.
Yeah.
3 to 5 years. I mean, you're looking at anywhere between 20 to 35 action steps a year.
Right.
That's almost impossible.
Right.
So I mean, in a sense, the number of action steps was truly aspirational, and I think it's an understatement. It's an understatement. But I think that going forward, if we do superintendent's evaluation, I think sort of a regroup to look at those action steps, to sit down and say, let's triage this, let's prioritize these action steps, and let's look at the things that we really want to get done. I mean, and I know it's hard, right? Because you're going to leave some people bleeding on the side of the road that you might be able to save, but I think we really need to look at that, because what I'm afraid of is that we're going to lose critical parts of it just because of that burnout.
Mm-hmm.
Critical staff.
What's that?
Critical staff or people involved as well.
Yes.
Just for that burnout and having to do a lot of the heavy lifting that they weren't really prepared for.
Mm-hmm. Anything else on that before I go to the goals?
Nope.
Okay. So my first student learning goal had to do with increasing the achievement in grades 3 through 8, students in the area of mathematics. And as I've said, a good goal a good artifact can cover several of the standards. So I think within that student learning goal, we are covering indicator A1, just looking at the standards. The 1A rather. 1A is curriculum, also looking at 1C, which is assessment, and 1D, which is evaluation. So my reflection on that is that we've made a lot of progress through the implementation of illustrative mathematics. We've revised the whole math curriculum through, at this point, pre-K through grade 7. And we've embedded building thinking classroom practices, which are the instructional practices, throughout the district. So I think those are really strong steps forward. We are quickly reaching success with the building thinking classrooms practices, and one of the artifacts I included was a national panel that one of our teachers was included on. So I mean, that's within just 1 year of implementation. We have one of our teachers who's been identified as sort of a really leading person in this field. We did not see the gains that I wanted to see in MCAS as of this point, however. So who knows what's going to happen this year. We did see some progress in MCAS last year. I think we'll see some more progress this year. I think I included some of our internal testing to back it up. So yeah, so if you look at the FAST Bridge grades 3 through 5, which is sort of our internal assessment, we've got a 3-year scope looking back at that. In 2021, we had 70% of our students who were at benchmark or above. This past winter, we had 75% of our students who were at benchmark or above. So I think that bodes well for continued progress. I also included benchmark testing that was part of Imagine Math. And so you can see from the fall to the winter, we saw really strong movement, and in terms of the numbers of students who were at benchmark on that assessment, with the possible exception of middle school, where there was some progress forward, but not to the same extent as there were in the other schools. So I think that's going to be a goal that we need to continue, unless quote, the scores turn out better than I think they are. I think we will continue to be working on improving math achievement in grades 3 through 8, probably through another evaluation cycle would be my guess on that. Thoughts?
So you said that you've completely restructured everything pre-K to 7.
Mm-hmm.
That's in mathematics.
Yep.
But we talk about the goal being 3 to 8. What did 8?
So we were implementing illustrative math 1 grade at a time through the middle school. So
Okay.
6th grade had it last year, this year
7th grade
6th
had
and 7th have it.
Okay.
Next year, we're talking about what we want to do for 8th grade. There's a decision yet to be made on that. So there'll probably be something different in 8th grade. I'm not 100% sure on that, but that is a big part of the discussion that's happening right now in the curriculum.
How has the take on that been, the illustrative math, so far?
First year is extremely hard to implement, especially for the elementary teachers who were also doing a new core literacy program at the same time. In the middle school, one of the things that we saw last year was when we were just piloting in grade 6, not enough time in the period to get through all of the content, which is why John revised the schedule to make the math classes longer. This year, we're hearing some of the same stuff in 7th grade. Of course, this is their first year implementing, so now they're up against some of those growing pains. I think another piece that we're seeing is the need for some tier 2 interventions to help kids who may be sort of right on the cusp of grasping the information to get the help they need so they can keep up with the curriculum. Mm-hmm. So I think we're going to see some more changes in the middle school schedule to provide some additional support so the kids can keep up with the content. So I would say, you know, you always expect an implementation dip in the first couple of years of implementing a new curriculum. With elementary, I think we're probably next year will be through that. I think middle school will probably still be in the process of the dip because you'll then have 7th grade in year 2 and you'll have 8th grade in year 1 or whatever we end up doing next with them.
Okay.
How have parents reacted in this second year? Because I know the first year of implementation, there was a lot of blowback.
Mm-hmm. I heard some of that in the first year, and especially because the methods of teaching math are so different that parents had difficulty helping students with the homework. I'm not hearing as much of that in the second year, with the exception of Imagine Math implementation at the middle school. That's the online component. Have heard some concerns about how that's being rolled out and what they're seeing at home with their kids. So I would say that the implementation of the Imagine Math piece has been a little bit different at the middle school than it's been at the elementary schools, and that might have something to do with it. So I think that's something we'll want to relook at as we think about how we're going to go into the next year at the middle school.
Would we need to supplement it with any other resources?
I'm not sure it's a matter of supplementation as much as the component of doing Imagine Math is a homework practice, that's a graded homework practice, is creating some tensions and some confusion. So I think that may be the piece to relook at. Or if we're going to do it, how much are we going to grade?
There's also the technical issues that go along with it. So my youngest is a 6th grader right now, so he's doing this, and I can tell you that Imagine Math, when they are online and they're doing it, it's fantastic. But I've literally been with him doing the assignments, and he will close out of it and it won't save, and so he gets a 0 on the homework assignment. So then I need to, I basically need to vouch for him, which I feel kind of silly doing, but to contact the teacher and say, no, he actually did it, and I know that the teachers had said that there were some glitches in the program, and I think for you know, that's not for us, right? The software development team and you know, and the people that write the program. But, you know, using that as another piece of the math curriculum for our students, you know, it's something that we're gonna need to keep an eye on going forward. As you've done this in the first 2 years, I know you've done this before. I mean, this is your 13th year as a superintendent. So I would say call on your experience, what you've seen in the past and what you've been able to do in the past, to be able to, you know, to help these things along. And sometimes, you know, a message from the superintendent's office on behalf of the middle school, you know, just to acknowledge that we know these things are sometimes an issue, and, you know, we work hard to make sure that we have the richest educational experience for our students, but at the same time, you know, sometimes we're held captive by software issues, software glitches, connectivity glitches. And again, you know, using this as a sort of an evaluative process, I don't know how much of this you had, you know, sort of ears on the ground about, but this is, you know, from a 1-to-1, I can tell you that, you know, I have one that's going through this right now, so I can give you a pretty good sit rep on what's happening in the school.
Have you noticed any difference in the closing out problem? Is it still as problematic as it was at the beginning?
Closing out
And not getting credit for the session?
It has not been an issue lately, so I'm hoping that was fixed, but I know that earlier on it was. So, but again, that was just one little glitch, but, you know, for students and parents, it can cause some angst as, you know, if they sit there and panic. And that's one of the things that, you know, how does that get reported? You know, is it just a digital report that comes through the teacher's portal on Imagine Math that says, yes, Dante was logged in online, completed the assignments? Is there, you know, I'm assuming there's a more detailed report that would come along with that. You know, but I think the bigger question is, you know, if it's still going on. I don't know, but certainly something to know.
Sure. Anything else on the student learning goal?
Nope.
Okay. So moving along to the professional practice goal, I think that one connects to standard 3A, which is engagement, and standard 4B, which is cultural proficiency. This was the goal to conduct an equity audit. As you know, the equity audit was conducted. Another component of the goal was to develop a plan from the equity audit, and as you know, we have an equity improvement plan based on that. This year, we're really focusing on bullying, and I shared with you some of the information that was also shared in my mid-year report concerning bullying and harassment. So for my artifact for that, I included the equity audit. Of course, you've already seen the equity improvement plan in my report on bullying. So I think that one was accomplished. Although the work to address the findings within it is ongoing.
How are you attempting, or the staff attempting to do that work?
So right now, we're focused on the first year of the bullying improvement plan. Some of the big pieces of, the equity improvement plan, some of the big pieces of that in the first year are revising our bullying prevention protocols. So I've been working with our DEI team to look at things that need to be revised. One of the things that has come out of our interviews from students who've experienced bullying is the need to start education earlier. they reported that they really started to see an attempt to mitigate bullying in the district, starting at the middle school, but actually experienced bullying starting at earlier levels. So we are working right now on adjusting practices in grades 4 and 5. So they are doing some positive pro-social stuff with students in grade 4, trying to identify students who are doing upstander behaviors or pro-social behaviors and reinforce that. And in grade 5, they're doing equity circles to address when there's an incident of bias, so that students can use it as a learning experience to hopefully reduce the level of overall bullying within the district. At the high school, we implemented Character Strong this year, so that is another curriculum, a pro-social curriculum that has anti-bullying component. And I continue to look for upstander training. That's one of the things the principals have specifically requested, to do more training for staff, for students, to be upstanders. I have us on the wait list at the Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center, but the demand from districts has been so overwhelming, we haven't gotten very far up that wait list. I have a request into the National Guard, because they have an anti-bullying program, because they've identified bullying in the armed forces as a significant problem that they need to deal with organizationally. And similar to our thought of, it needs to begin sooner, they've said, well, they really need to help schools address this behavior, so service individuals aren't coming in with bullying behaviors. So continuing to work on the upstander training. A lot of this is related to athletics as well. So Steve Berndret and I went to Addressing Hate in Sports, which is a anti-bullying effort that the MIAA is taking on. And so we are trying to take some strategies from that to make sure that bullying is addressed as a component of coaching with students, and when there are incidents of bullying that occur either in practice or in games, that we have a way of providing training, education, and consequences for kids who engage in bullying.
Are we still looking at proactive ways at the younger grades, like responsive classroom and some other?
We still do responsive classroom, but the feedback we had from students and from our own data was it wasn't enough. So we're looking to layer on other components that may address it more specifically and more directly. And we're also looking at the information we have about our targets. We know that both as aggressors and as targets, it's more likely to be male students, so trying to think about how we address that maybe a little bit differently, and more likely to be students with disabilities. So there is a part of the IEP process that talks about if you have a disability that makes you either more prone to engage in bullying or more likely to be a bully, the team needs to think about supports and services that can help you modify your behaviors, either to resist doing them or to resist acting out negatively if you see them. Should we do District Improvement 1? Okay. District Improvement 1 is
MTSS?
Yes. And so I included my MTSS 1.1 document. You've seen that at a couple of school committee meetings. And so I don't want to belabor the point, because I have at school committee meetings, just to say that we're still seeing some lower levels of climate at the middle school as reported by 8th graders. The 2024 vocal survey, of course, they won't be taking until next month. So, and we won't know that until the fall. I'm hoping that there is some improvement there. The middle school has been focused on culture building, both last year and this year. Last year they did a rebrand of their PBIS program and their school-wide expectations to attempt to address that. And this year they've done more what I'll call fun things. If you think of PBIS as more around sort of consequences and behavior modification. This year they've done more activities to try to just help students have a positive experience at school. So they started the morning show. I think I talked about once being interviewed on the morning show. They do the shutdown the school. I think it's either once a month or once a quarter, where they take an afternoon and they just say, okay, we're going to stop learning, explicit curriculum-based learning, and have fun and be together, either through games or school-wide assemblies. So remains to be seen what will come out in the vocal survey this year, but those are definitely actions they're taking to try to address those findings.
What do you see for the next 12 to 18 months?
With MTSS, I think strengthening the program at the middle school. I think we have figured out how a pretty solid MTSS system in the elementary school. I think this year's MTSS, the middle, is the first attempt. I think next year we need to identify, first of all, times in the schedule. So John is going to be proposing a schedule that has wind blocks like they have in the elementary school, so there's time to do interventions. And time diagnostic testing results with specific intervention activities. So instead of saying, for example, a student is low in reading, we're going to put them in a reading class, identifying, well, what is it? Is it decoding? Is it comprehension? Is it prosody? And then having different types of intervention groups that can specifically address those kinds of problems. So I think that's the next step. I'd like to develop the high school program a little bit more as well. And then I also think that we need to just keep re-revising. I think in general our ELA interventions are stronger than our math interventions. There's more known in the field about reading interventions than there are about math interventions. For example, we have consensus on what the 5 components of reading are. When you ask about what the components of math are, you get a list of 7 to 11 different pieces. So can't be ahead of the field, but I want us to be at least right in the forefront of the field. And so that's what I think it, sort of district-wide also will be a goal. And also I want to focus on the extension activities, because remember I said MTSS was not just for kids who had difficulties, but also kids who were showing us they were ready for more. So at the elementary level, we were able to do some book clubs and other activities for students who were ready to be engaged with higher level text. And we were able to start some math and science activities this year in a sort of limited way, so I'd like to see an expansion of those.
Always a challenge.
Yep.
Always a challenge. It's the other end of the special education spectrum.
Yep.
Things that we've talked about since I started on the committee, and that is how do you identify those kids, and then how do you properly administer those enrichment programs to provide them meaningful evaluation, rather than just giving them hard, busy work and sort of just sending them off, but using that as a next step for them, but a solid next step, not just sort of a next leg up, but then you're going to come back down to where you are. And I think that's probably one of the more difficult tasks that we have in education.
Well, I think we have a solid way of identifying them through universal screening. We can say kids in the top 10% or top 5%. The challenge is getting staffing and time and resources to them to actually do it.
What screening methods are you using?
So variety at elementary for ELA, the primary diagnostic screener is DIBELS, which has a variety of assessments within it. We also are using FastBridge for math and social emotional screening. We also have within Imagine Math a diagnostic component, which I showed you some of the results of that when I was talking about an earlier goal. And then, when students get old enough, there's some research out there that says you could just use the results of your statewide achievement testing, because you're basically going to pick up the same kids on math that you're going to pick up on any other kind of screener.
And how do you inform a child who has the ability but just gives up, in terms of how you inform the testing of how that child is processing things. You know, it's one thing to do a social emotional component and get all the scores. How do you put that into possibilities, or maybe what do you do with that information so that it works?
So, like what I was saying is at the elementary level, we do have some extension activities for English language arts, and we're starting to do some in math and science. What those look like are primarily book clubs. So when we go to the WINS block, and some kids may be getting a reading intervention, some other kids may be going and meeting with the librarian and doing a book club. In math, I know that we've been relying upon some community volunteers who have experience in math and science fields to come in and do some activities with kids, show them some things that wouldn't necessarily be part of the curriculum but would be enriching for them. But that's where I think the building needs to go. At the high school, of course, it becomes higher level courses.
Yeah.
At the middle school, it's another area where we got to build out our MTSS system.
DI2?
Yes, DI2 was
Website.
the website, and I think that's been done. One of the things that is an indicator was just this. I was putting this together at the time we were getting ready for the forum, so I said, is there any information up there about our reorganization? And there were 32 things all on the front page, so I think it's an effective means of getting information out there. I like it a lot better than the other website. Of course, I'm probably biased in that, but I think it's a big improvement.
No, I congratulate you on creating a much more interactive, a much more user-friendly website. Again, it's the evaluation, congratulations. And the biggest issue with the website is maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
So as the CEO of the school district, what sort of systems did we set up to review, update, the website as, in as timely a manner as possible?
So to address that problem, which was the very problem that the old website had, we changed the philosophy, and I'll credit Brandon from Rediker, who is sort of our consultant on this, to say you need to really rethink your website. So you need to have a limited amount of evergreen content that goes up there and just stays. So we have some of that up there, and you'll notice that the websites are a lot less cluttered than they used to be, because it's just evergreen. And then everything else is pushed out through a system that automatically times out. So everything else is through our Plus portals. So when we put announcements up there, or through Google Drive. So a lot of the back end of what you see on the website is Google Drive. So when we change something, it's no longer, I changed the website. It's like,
You changed the drive.
right, this was the policy, here's the new policy, I just change it here, and then it automatically changes on the
Automatically
website.
updates.
So trying to automate that as much as possible, try relying on evergreen content as much as possible, has, I think, kept us up to date. The Plus portals prompt you for an expiration date on anything you're putting in through there, so it kind of automatically has a way of cleaning itself up, if you know what I mean.
It doesn't give you the option for interminable.
It does, but it at least makes you thinking, well,
In terms of
okay,
what you-
so
how
this
you
is
want
my,
it there.
right, this is sports registration. Is this something that should be up there all forever?
Right.
Or should this be up here for the next 2 weeks?
Right,
You know?
right. So, and then for ongoing review, even though, right, so we're still gonna have to monitor that evergreen content, we're still gonna have to monitor what goes up there. So again, those are, thought processes as we move forward, and, involving maybe, sort of a less conventional, group to do that, and I've talked for years about the possibilities of using our own students to help create and maintain things like that, and that's, I think that's a good opportunity. And I think for a lot of kids, you know, again, I mean, this sort of fits into vocations, right? I mean, this is not, you know, we're not thinking about kids that are necessarily gonna go on to post-secondary education as much as maybe they're gonna go out and work as, you know, as a web designer. And, you know, it gives them vocational opportunities to actually be on the creative end and see how a website is done and be able to experience that, so that they, at least from, you know, a website that's hosted at an educational level, those kids have an idea of how that content is uploaded, how that content is maintained. And you know, certainly I think it's a great opportunity.
I agree, and all of the video assets as well as the photo assets of our current website were collected by students. So.
Now, is there eventually we will get to, I mean, we have archived the minutes for, or the recordings for meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Those are YouTubed?
Mm-hmm.
Those are archived on YouTube, so we don't need to physically retain those. Are there other things that we do, and I'm asking you this as I sort of think about it in my mind, are there, as we look forward, do you foresee anything that, you know, we may need significant storage for, or that we may run into a problem in terms of archiving?
I don't think we'll run out of storage space, because, you know, most of what we have is either on a Google product. At Google Apps for Education, we have a ton of storage that comes with it as part of our enterprise account. The website itself, I'm not sure what the limits are there. We have, yeah, we haven't been told of any limits.
No, I'm just curious. I'm just throwing it out there as, you know, and ideas, you know, that you know, as I look forward, those are things that I would think of. Is, you know, I look at my own website, and, you know, again, you have to constantly update it. You know, whoever comes in, comes out. You know, staff directory, etc. So you probably have it easier on your end, having the Google on the back end of that, because you can use the Google Drive to basically keep that content fresh.
That's
Out of that, so.
And the videos is actually a good example of that. I think on the old website, the meeting that was up there was from several years ago. I don't know why that one was chosen, but now our webpage is linked to our school committee Google channel. So every time a new video goes up there, it automatically goes into
We
the.
just automatic. As a matter of fact, sometimes people are, like Jim Bissonette was saying, I feel like I'm watching it almost real time because it's immediate. Before I used to have to take 24 hours, download it.
Yep.
So it's right there.
Yep. So, but I do congratulate you on that, and thank you for undertaking that and doing it with speed.
And I gotta thank Erin, because she was part of that committee, an integral part of that committee.
Nice job, Erin.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
All right, so then I just put in some of the other artifacts for other standards that weren't covered in the district improvement and student learning. So one is data-informed decision-making. I just gave you another copy of the report that you get every year, the accountability report. I think that's all about that. In environment, laws, ethics, politics, and managing conflict, I shared with you this PowerPoint that we put together for the principals. There were staff who were wondering, so what are the requirements for restraint, who's allowed to restrain, when can we restrain, etc. And so all this information was shared district-wide. It also went into clarification of roles of different people involved in any kind of a student behavior incident. So that's why I put that in there. Also goes into our CSTAG. If you're not on the CSTAG team, you want people to know what that was. And then in human resources management and development, 2B is about mentoring and induction. So I put our mentoring and induction handbook. This is a program that Lisa oversees. I support it, but that is how we accomplish that goal. In scheduling and management information systems, which is item 2C. We talked about this a little bit before, but see that this indicator is all about making sure we put together schedules that maximize time for learning. And we made the changes at the middle school schedule this year because we're finding not enough time for math. As I said, I expect there's going to be another change coming up because we're finding there's not enough time for interventions. So the next one is fiscal systems, so I just put budget presentation, I've seen that many times at this point.
Can we review that, just for old
Sure.
time's sake? Just kidding.
Okay, next is sharing responsibility, and this one is about strengthening the home and school partnership. So this was something new that sort of an artifact of MTSS, which is now we're reporting to families not only, so here are the grades at the end of the semester, but when we do a universal screening measure, here's how your student did. And if we think they may need some help, what we're going to do to help them. If we think they may be ready for more, here are some opportunities we can provide to try to stretch them. So that's a new way of partnering with families and trying to share information about where kids are. So I included some reports so you can see what those look like, of course redacted. But these are examples of what families actually get. Next, in communication, I just put a copy of my entry findings because I think that's a nice summary of one of my more significant communications to the communities about what's going on. Next is family concerns. You have this thing that looks like an FBI or CIA file because it's all confidential, but I just wanted you to see sort of my telephone log. The thing at the end where the X's are, that's the
Completed.
thing, right. So you can see, in most cases, we're able to get to
Say how
resolution.
many? Cheryl's asking how many.
I was asking how many inks did you go through?
Oh,
Oh, how many?
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's a lot of black ink there.
lot of toner. Called the toner up for that one.
Fiscal responsibility.
So,
He only made one copy though, so
that's right.
That's
I'm
right.
gonna
That's just
chalk it up as a
electronic.
plus for him, fiscal responsibility.
So the next one is standard 4A, which is commitment to high standards, and 4D, which is continuous learning. This one really has to do with the ability to sort of set standards for the district and also to help principals and administrators with their own learning. So I just gave you copies of the DLT agendas we have, so you can see what we've been working on over the course of the last 2 years. You can see a lot of this has to do with things like aligning practices. There are many things that have to do with implementing educator evaluation, implementing our new curriculum. There's also a series of things in here called Leading for Equity, which is a book study that we're doing as a group, and I'm leading them through that. So here you can see all the stuff we've been working on. And then,
John, can I just ask you a question
Sure.
on equity? Have you, with the way in which you structured things and tried to build up our capacity to offer equity in our schools, have you seen any kind of changes on hiring practices and hiring people of color?
I can tell you that that is one of the things that principals have identified as a really important need. I have that in our equity improvement plan as a year 3 activity because a lot of it is about priming the pump and building pipelines. So one of the things that we're doing right now is formalizing our relationship with AIC and their teacher prep program. It's a very diverse teacher prep program. So we're starting by a new program we're going to be doing in the district next year called model classrooms. So what a model classroom is a classroom that a principal has identified as reaching a very high level of practice that we think is good for incoming teachers to take a look at. And so AIC will be providing students to go into our model classrooms. That is one step of a multi-step process to hopefully get a chance to have more diverse pre-practicum students and then more diverse practicum students and then hopefully more diverse educators within our district. We'll also be working with other colleges to try to secure pipelines, which even aside from diversity, I think is important because we're finding that the pipeline for teachers is not as full as it used to be.
Robust.
Yes. So the work right now is really building the relationships with the teacher prep programs, and I think the next steps will be coming down the road in terms of changes of our workforce, probably 2 years out at this point, I would say.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just as an aside, and this, obviously, this is not part of your evaluation, but when we look, and I know you're active at a much higher level than just our district as well, but like for MASS, and their sort of, their interaction with the legislature, what kinds of initiatives, or are they thinking of initiatives to try to reignite the interest in education? Because we know that the number of teachers going through our schools is dropping rapidly, and the availability of highly qualified teachers is something that everybody wants, but we're just at this point, I mean, we're looking for bodies. So I'm just curious, I mean, what kinds of things are they, have they even recognized this as a serious problem? Because as we look at you know, potential faculty members, I mean, we can look at, you know, faculty members of any color. I'm just looking at, you know, the paucity of teachers that are coming through programs, and I mean, I've heard it from several people who are in education that said that they just don't have the numbers.
So a couple of things I think have to do around reducing barriers to people getting into the field. So I don't know if this is an official stance of our organization, but we've had a lot of conversations about the MTELs as a barrier for people. So there have been many stories of folks who've had excellent long-term subs who connected with kids, who got good results, knew how to teach but couldn't pass the MTEL. So, you know, whether there could be an alternative way for people to demonstrate their competency has been part of the discussion. I know there's been advocacy around extending the emergency licensure for much the same reason. You know, during COVID, many people came into the classroom who were mid-career changers, who hadn't thought of it. Some of them are working out quite well. But thinking about, okay, now I have to go back and start a whole educator prep program to continue doing this is daunting. So
it's more than daunting. I mean, for a lot of people, it's simply not possible. You know, you're looking at night classes, but then as part of your, you know, your practicum is 16 weeks. You know, basically it's 4 months of slave labor, unpaid internship. How does somebody who is working a full-time job and going to school at night, how are they going to make that happen? They can't. And I think that's been one of the discussions that I've had with several people at the vocational level. I think you and I have talked about that previously. Is we have a lot of people who are, you know, masters in their trade, but for one reason or another, their career actively providing service gets cut short. It could be a back injury, it might be a physical injury, a nerve injury in their hand, repetitive stress, whatever. But what's up here is so important, and being able to use those people in the classroom, and then again having that barrier, having that, you know, that it is more than daunting. And to ask those people to say, okay, well, we're going to ask you to go back and you're going to have to take all these classes, and especially if you have somebody who has vocational training and they're OJT since they graduated from high school, what you're doing is you're basically saying you need to go to college and then you need to take all of this coursework and then you need to take 4 months off
Mhm.
and work in a classroom. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
it's very difficult. I hope that the discussions will continue around that because I think it's very important. And when we talk about teachers, you know, we talk about licensure of teachers and everything else, and, you know, it's like that in every profession, right? If you're in medicine, you're in dentistry, whatever. But at some point, if we look back in time, a teacher was just a learned individual. It was somebody who had experience and who had the ability to pass that knowledge on to the next generation, to pass that knowledge on to students. And I think we've lost our way. I really do. I think we've gotten so focused on certification and so focused on the paper credentials that we've kind of lost sight of those people that came in mid-career. And they just have a way of connecting. And if they have a way of connecting with kids, God love them, that makes them even more valuable. So that's just thoughts from outside the box, but.
And then to, I think, just sort of wrap it up, the last one is 5E, which is shared vision. And so I just gave all the minutes of our school committee meetings, because, you know, in my report, every couple of weeks, I try to tell you how the vision's going and how we're doing with the strategic plan. So that's my collection of stuff.
Do you have a bed in the back that we can use?
No,
As we're going through the minutes?
The first thing I would like to do is I would like to thank you for really thoughtfully putting together your evaluation. This is different than evaluations that we've done previously. I worked under 2 different superintendents, so you're my 3rd. I like this approach. The fact that you were able to provide, you know, sort of the goals. Here's the artifacts that back them up. Here are the other artifacts. It helps. It helps simplify the process. It helps make things much easier. I appreciate that. The other thing that I appreciate is the amount of preparation that you engage in for meetings. And I can tell you with my experience from the school committee, you know, the summaries that you distribute before the meetings, those are always helpful. They're always great to lead, give you an expectation of what's going on for the evening. But even in terms of policy, I mean, the time that you spend on that, and you know, the materials that you give us in helping to review those policies, I mean, that's invaluable. And that is from a school committee member's perspective. I can tell you that you know, kudos, because again, going in years past, it was basically, you know, here's the old policy, here's the new policy, discuss, you know, as opposed to, you know, providing, you know, sort of an overview like you do. It makes things very, very easy. So I really do appreciate the effort and the time that you put into that, and for making our jobs a lot easier.
Thank you. So what happens now? This is my first time being evaluated in this district, so.
So we can send these out to everybody.
Yeah, so basically, everybody has a digital copy of what was said to us.
Okay.
Okay, so now each member of the school committee will then submit an individual evaluation. So we'll then have 7 evaluations, and then we will need to have a deadline, and then we'll need to set a second meeting where we come back, and you don't need to be here. You can if you want to. But basically, we then create one grand summative report that will, it weights all of the ratings from all of the 7 members of the committee, and it will use, you know, the written feedback that was provided by the members as sort of a guide for the, you know, sort of the overall evaluation. So that's how, is that how you have seen it done in the past, or?
It was a little bit different in
Northampton?
Northampton. In Northampton, what happened was this committee would make recommendations to the full committee and say, we looked at it in detail, you know, if you want to add something, or if you disagree, whatever, let us know.
Okay.
You know, whatever process you're familiar with, comfortable with is fine for me.
Yeah, I think we've always done it where, you know, I mean, it is the responsibility of every committee member, so I believe every committee member should be given the opportunity to provide individual ranking, and more importantly, I think it's sort of the written commentary in a lot of ways, you know. There's, you know, the ranking is checking a box, but actually sort of providing, I think, thoughtful feedback rather than just, it's very easy to just check a box,
Mhm.
right? Very easy, proficient, 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 proficient.
Yeah.
I never want to do that in an evaluation. I think it's rude, and I think it's lazy. So, and I hope that we have, you know, I know that we have 2 other committee members here who have the same level of commitment, and I think we have 4 others that will do the same thing. So I think overall, when this is done, I think you'll find it to be incredibly useful.
Great.
So we'll work backwards, because we plan on doing the evaluation, I think our last meeting in June. So we'll just figure out the dates of when they should be due. If you share the Google Drive with them, share
Share the date.
yeah,
That's the last
the
meeting.
evaluations, and then,
In June is when we do it.
yeah. So then that way we can give them enough time to fill out the evaluation, and then it gives us enough time to go through them and create that.
Right.
Somebody different.
So we should probably set a date then for the end of June.
Yes.
Will you be providing your artifacts in a secure location so that we can go in and look?
You have,
You have,
I'll do them both electronically, and I'll have this office copy for anyone who wants to come in. And I don't actually care about it being secure because it's a public document.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And anyone who's
Okay.
watching, that's what it's.
No, yeah. No, I much prefer the electronic copy is great, and you just scroll through it on your iPad. It's very easy. All right, do Mondays, is Monday a good day for everybody? Mondays are kind of tough for me, but Tuesdays are okay if I can sneak out. How about, you want to go the last week, like the 25th?
Sure. Is our last meeting, I think, we doing the, is it the
27th.
27th? Did we get to?
we didn't, but we could do the 27th,
When's our last?
let's do that the 27th. We had.
Because we have the 1st and, it was actually, because June 1st falls on a Saturday. So if we do the 1st and 3rd, it's the 6th and the 20th.
But I don't think we're gonna do the 6th. I thought we were talking about moving because we have graduation on the 7th, Bill,
Okay,
which is,
okay. So move it to the 13th and the 27th.
does that sound good?
Yeah.
So when I send them the materials, what do you think for a due date? If it's gonna be June 27th, will be the 25th?
Have to have it in by the 25th. And then we'll meet,
May 20, like May.
May or June?
Well, we'll want time to create the report from their evaluations.
Right.
So if
Oh,
they
right.
have it in, I mean, even the first week of June is okay. Or I would say the last week of May, I think that's plenty of time.
If I do it, I can do it tonight. I can share this information.
Yeah, so if
I'll
we have
share
it due
the
sometime the last week of
artifacts.
May.
Oh,
which they've already seen, but I'll just share the artifacts. I'll share these.
yeah, I was
two.
just getting as close to the end of the month.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I've seen the other.
Because typically what I remember doing was, we would just kind of
There was a
pull
statement
snippets
that we
from
sent to
Yeah.
you.
each of, so we
You're
would
right,
do
that occurred.
do the, like, the professional
Right.
goals, do the evaluation.
yep.
So if you want more time, it's okay with me. I'd say on a Tuesday, whenever you want to do it.
Okay. We can still meet at the end of June, I'm just saying, that way it gives everybody time to, is that,
That's fine with me.
is
I'm
that
just
okay?
thinking
All right,
that-
yeah, no, so when do you want to do it? You want to do
Wait, which one are we setting right now?
we're setting the review, so it'll be when we have to meet to
Yes.
review everybody's
Okay,
things.
yes, I'm sorry, I was talking about the date that everybody needs to complete the evaluation, sort of send back, that's what I was talking about.
Oh, yeah, well, it would still be the same, because then we would take all of those evaluations and compile them.
Yeah,
So, but you want to just give us a little bit of a buffer between that and the end of the year.
yeah,
So you want to push it back a couple weeks, and we'll do like the 11th?
well, we can meet later. I just wanna make sure that, because if people don't send them back and they're not done in time, so we can meet whenever.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Sometimes-
that's there,
Sometimes we
yeah.
don't get things right back.
Yeah.
So you wanna require, so if we meet on the 25th, maybe if we require them by the 18th? I mean, that's a heck of a lot of time. It's not even May yet. So if they can't get an evaluation done in 7 weeks.
I know, is it, well, if that's, I think what Michelle was getting at, more like in May to keep it
Yeah,
less,
give them to the end of May to complete
just
it.
give them the.
Okay.
And then we have several weeks to get our meeting together and gives us time too.
Because then it gives them
May.
too much time, right, Michelle?
When's Memorial Day, the 27th? So what about like the 31st? Just say by the end, by May 31st?
May 31st,
Yeah.
perfect.
That's the deadline. And then do you wanna just do our meeting like a couple weeks after that? So we have time, so we'll do it on like the 11th?
Yep.
Does that work?
We plan to.
Is that?
Yeah, that's right. I already have my calendar planning, so
We have plans.
I'm blocked off.
Yeah, we do
Okay.
too. But we could do
We'll see what
that.
happens.
Do you wanna,
No, that's okay, I'm just saying.
You
I'm
should-
available, it's on my calendar, so whatever.
Okay.
Fill in the blank for what the meeting is.
We did,
What
yeah,
time?
we did every 2 weeks for.
so what do you have planning for
Every
what
2
time?
weeks,
Let me check
but
for you.
that's 5:30.
5:30? I mean, we could do later for our meeting if we want to.
5:30 is good with me.
I'm flexible,
You what?
whatever time works.
Well, do you wanna wait and see if we, this planning committee is just one I put in for every 2 weeks
Yeah.
as a placeholder. So do you think we're going to, do you wanna save it as planning and like Bill said, make ours 6:30 for the
Sure.
superintendent, that gives us a placeholder? At 6:30 on the 11th, and this will be the self. In the meantime, I'll share that the evaluations from each committee member are due May 31st, Friday.
In the documents.
In the documents, that's Switzerland.
That plus these things.
Oh, yeah, I'll send it out, I see what you're saying.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that, send them out from the drive and put that in the blurb. Their stuff is due the 31st.
Okay.
Anything else you wanna say on your behalf?
I just want to thank the subcommittee for your feedback tonight and taking the time out to the process. I really appreciate your commitment to this.
One of our jobs. One of our jobs, we appreciate it. It's, I think honestly, it's, from my perspective, it's easy to be able to provide the feedback because you give so much. You know, it would be, it's a lot harder if you have somebody that's not as, sort of not as engaging. So, I think it makes it a much easier process, for sure.
Okay.
You're welcome. So I guess I'm chairing the meeting
Yes,
soon.
yes.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're out.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Welcome.
We are not